Alright, what up? It's AGB. We're here with another episode of Montreal Connected. I got my man BuDz over here. We got a big interview coming. You know, this is someone who's real important in Montreal hip-hop. And, you know, I think this is a real important interview. So, like, I'm glad to get it done. And I'm glad you're here, bro.
Man, thanks for having me by. Well, thanks for having me by your show. Thanks for coming by the studio, man. It's great having you here.
Yeah, I just want to say we're here at Makeway Studios. Anyone who needs to record in Montreal, if you don't already know, well, this is the place you should go. You know, it's just what it is. Like, move this a little bit, make it a bit more natural. There we go. Okay, so let's start it like simple here. Okay.
Yeah.
Who are you? And, like, how would you describe yourself to people? Because, like, I know you're super known in Montreal, but I want you to, like, focus on, like, this is more of an audience of Toronto and people who may not know exactly who you are, you know? So,
for sure.
Kind of give us an introduction into who you are.
So I'm an artist at heart. That's where I always started off. I go by the name of BuDz. And when it came down to just really working within the network of the community of Montreal here, I saw how many people were around me at an early age. And I was really into the self-production type thing. So I had a big circle around me. So I was always recording everybody. Got my skills up heavy. Ended up going to Recording Arts Canada. Got my degree in engineering. Mm-hmm. And then that's when things really took off. I started renting locations. And slowly I was able to build the Makeway brand through having just big locations, always running 24/7. And we were always super active in the community as well. So not only am I moving the scene as an artist with a couple of my people, I was also helping out tons of people within the community in the studio, whether it's beats, recording, music videos, photo studio. We really had everything rocking all in one house. So anyone who could come in, they could get anything done from A to Z.
Yeah, I think that's real important. I definitely want to get into that, but, like, I know you talked about, like, big locations and stuff like that. I kind of, like, I know we don't have a super lot of time, so it's not, like, make it super long, because I know, like, I think you said one of you had, like, over 10 locations or something crazy like that. I don't know if that's true, but just kind of give us a history of all the locations you've been at over the years. And,
sure.
Like, from beginning to end, like, you don't have to get into detail of all of them, but, like, sort of the highlighted ones that, like, were the most memorable.
So for everybody in the early days, like 2011, I was in my bedroom. I was in there with, you know, my bed down the corner, the mic 6 feet away from it, and we're just rocking. Then things started getting too hectic. You know, you can't be having all these people by the crib, so I started renting out spots. I had one on St. Denis, and then I was splitting that with another engineer who already had it made. Still got too busy, got too hectic, we had to move. So I found another spot in on St. Antoine across from the Bell Center. And this was a big jam space where tons of fucking artists were coming left and right, smoking in the building, anything goes type thing. It's very known in Montreal, 1180 St. Antoine. Tons of people have been by there to record their records.
Yeah, I've heard.
So I had a location in there, small little room. Slowly, within a year, I was recording all these artists from Enema, K-Bands, this and that. And we were just rocking. But in this small room, like, we were sweating in these summers, like, really working. And then, like, 4 studios in the building, boom, went out of business. So we had these fully built rooms that we could just pretty much plug and play. Like, I could run my wires through the thing, everything, and we're good. And we had these, like, tall ceilings, wood, booth, everything done, you know? So I asked the landlord, I'm like, yo, how much that spot? So then I got this next spot. And I ended up just taking over that. So now we had and that was probably 2014 when, like, Instagram just came out, or it was really getting popular. So we started using Instagram. We had a beautiful location to show off. Yeah. And then they tore down that building because it was about time. So that was when I really made the big jump. Well, okay, now if we're really going to do this, I'm going to re-renovate a place. I need to do it proper. So I ended up getting a building on de l'Église. That's right in Verdun. That was when I was 22, 2015. And we ended up renting. That's when I really said, okay, we have to do everything all in-house, and there's no more moving. I need a spot where I could really just plant my roots. And this was a standalone building. We had 3 floors, and there was no neighbors, nothing attached. So when it comes to bass, running our stuff, doing whatever we need to do, ins and out, all sorts of times of the night, we were rocking, and there was nobody to kick us out, nobody to complain, nobody to do anything. So to have the music scene under our control, I mean, it was like one of the first times we were really able to just go all out. So we did that for 5 years. And then that's when partnered up with On a Roll Records to get this building here. Now we're in Chabanel area. We got a more solid building. We learned from the first building on how to do construction and this and that, because we were kind of just going as we were going before. So now we were really able to be like, all right, let's take all the best aspects from that building and do it here. And now we've been here for 3 years. So yeah, it's been a jump of location to location to location to location. You know, always one at a time, but a lot of work. A lot of work in that.
I think you're in a good spot here, to be honest, because like I see it like you're in a spot where people pretty much anywhere from the city can come and be here pretty and like, you know, not like, you know, they're not there in 5 minutes always, but it's like a pretty central point where nobody's like, oh, if you're in the East End, it's not like you're crazy far, you know, you're pretty close, or someone's coming from even like you said, like where you were before Verdun or something, like it's not hard to get here, you know. So I think you're in a really good location. So that kind of leads me perfect into my next question. Like, I see you have a lot going on here. You kind of want to talk to us about like all the specific services you have going on in this building, because I know like I heard your interviews, and I know like over the years I've seen it, like you're like, yeah, we would have someone doing this, and then like I sort of like took it over and like kept like making myself bigger where I didn't have to outsource. You want to talk to us about everything you have going on here?
Yeah, sure. So now the main things when it comes to like, let's say you're an artist coming in looking for a service, we have recording, mixing, mastering. Then when it comes down to outside the studio, so like the photo studio, we do photo shoots. We rent out the photo studio to photographers. We have the whole smoke, lights, everything going on. We also do cover arts, you know, anything to really get your song out. So like developing a full release plan kind of needs a checklist of things. So if just to get your song on Spotify, let's say you need the cover art, you need XYZ. So these are the kind of things that we're really prepping artists with, and just depending on what their needs are. Then it comes out to if people want to do interviews. So now it's okay, you have a nice website, your logo, maybe if you really want to go the extra mile, you got business cards, your social media is good. Hey, look, I could actually get you on all these radio stations that I know across Montreal. So I helped out a couple artists do radio tours. So now that I could have done it before they did the branding, but the biggest thing is I want you to get the most out of all these services, and I want you to get the most out of a radio tour. If you're going to go to 10 different stations, are you just going to plop in there and every wave that you get is going to go out the window because there was nowhere for them to actually retain the following? So I make sure that they have the highest percentage of that. And, you know, it's kind of like when you're in front of a stage of 2,000 people, let's say you're performing, 10% of those people are going to check out your Instagram. 10% of that 10% is going to follow you. 10% of that 10% is probably going to listen to your music, and then maybe 5% of all those 10% are actually going to buy a t-shirt. So the more you're branded, well, now that 10% might end up looking like a 20%. And that window opens up a little bit more, the easier and the better that things look and the better that things are branded. So that's why I always focus on that aspect of an artist's career, is to think, well, look, there's everything we do in the studio, but then there's so many things you have to do after to really market yourself properly and make sure that you're getting the most out of every opportunity that you're spending money on, from going to a radio station to performing at a venue.
No, it's really nice to hear when like someone else who's in the city, like, you know, a lot of the stuff I do is with people in Toronto or people in the US too, who kind of already know the game. I find there's a lot of people in the city who like don't understand the type of stuff you just told me, that don't understand that just a hot song is not going to get you a contract. It's not going to make you a huge artist. For
sure. Well, I mean, being good ain't good enough.
Exactly.
It's not the 90s anymore, you know? Exactly. Like, just being a crazy rapper from, you know, it doesn't work no more.
Well, and
you know,
there's a lot of them. A lot of people can rap. Not everybody can go and
that's huge.
Build all the stuff behind the scenes and build a market and put out a video and know where to put it and how to put it out. So it's like, it's good that there's someone in the city who like is here to do that. And part of why I'm like speaking about this, cause I think like Make Way is a real pillar in Montreal hip hop. Like I see you guys, DMS, and like those are the real pillars I see in the city.
Yeah,
you know?
Big shout out for you.
I'm trying to kind of get like We Love Hip Hop built up here like that. We're kind of like that in Toronto. But well, the next thing I wanted to ask you is, I know you do a lot of rappers, you know, that aren't necessarily from Montreal. When people come through, they tap in. What do rappers think when they come from outside of the city?
So when I have somebody that comes here on a show, if they're ever trying to tap into a studio, usually they end up calling me to get in, because, you know, it's the most presentable spot in town pretty much that is, you know, hip-hop orientated. So let's just say I got a guy like Mano who's coming in because he was doing a show. I always ask them at the end, you know, like, you've been around the world, you've recorded at all sorts of crazy studios and this and that, like, what do you think of the experience today? And I almost get the same answer every time, and it's just like, man, speechless. I don't really got to say nothing. You knew what to do, you were moving the thing, I didn't have to say anything, you had it. Yeah. And that's kind of what an artist wants when you're in the booth. It's just like, yo, the guy knows what he's doing. You have that trust with your engineer.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. You know, and I had that from all sorts of people. Raekwon, too, when he was in the studio. They were telling me it was the first time they seen him smile in years in a booth. Because, and I understand that. You know, I've been to around the world, too, and I've gone to a lot of studios where these engineers, I'm like, how are you even in the seat right now? Mm-hmm. You know, like, I've had engineers just out the room, and me, I take the spot for my own session in different cities.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. So I understand these guys, they go to big studios, and they're already like, all right, what are we about to deal with?
Yeah.
So when they actually get an engineer that's in the scene, I'm an artist, too, so I understand what it's like being on the other side of the booth. It's a really good feeling.
So would you say, like, to keep people in the door, like, because I know a lot of studios, like, they don't last. Like, people do it for a while, and it's hard to keep everything up and keep people in the door. It can be easy at first, but it gets hard with the grind. And, you know, mics cost things, computers cost things, everything's a cost, and you really have to work a lot to pay for that. It's like, do you think that, like, the standards of the studio and making sure everything's on point, like you said, stress-free and everything's like that is really what keeps you alive and keeps people coming in the door?
Well, I think that the fact that we've been consistent for the past 12 years, I've always been next to my phone, I've always been available for the artist, I've always been on point. I don't have a second job that tore me away, that wasn't allowing me to be available to my clients when they needed X, Y, Z. I think that's a big thing that really kept us on top for sure. The fact of how fast I'm doing my mixes too, how fast I am to work with an artist, how I get the vibe, how I understand what they're looking for right away. And I know that every artist is different, so I gotta be a chameleon when I'm in the studio as an engineer to know, okay, this person, some people, they barely talk to me, they rush right in the booth. And some people, they come in, they start to twist up, they already came 10 minutes late. You know, there's a different type of person, and you gotta just know how to rock with every single vibe, you know, and that's also a big thing, you know, it's just vibe. You know, when you're not feeling comfortable, you're not going to be recording your best. And the first thing you learn in sound school, let's say, is, you know, where the source of sound is coming from, and that's the instrument. And in this case, the instrument is the person. So if the person's not feeling good, the instrument's not projecting at its full capacity. And if you just have to be in the vibe for that. And going to a new studio, even for me, like, you don't know the guy, you don't know what he's thinking, and, like, you know, it's just a different vibe. You never recorded there. Sometimes, you know, you get a little anxiety, and, like, a lot of artists have it, and you just got to know the person. You know, sometimes I see first sessions are like that, so we ease in, but it's normal in a big studio, especially the big studio. People get intimidated sometimes, so I just really try to be real personable, and everyone ends up vibing, everyone ends up having the best time of their life, you know, when we have sessions, and it's rocking, and having that connection with somebody who finally understands your music. That's the kind of stuff that really gets me going.
No, it's good. I can tell you really care about what you do, and I think, like, that's the most important thing. So let's sort of move on. Like, this is like Toronto network, but we're on a Montreal show here, Montreal Connected, you know. So I want to talk kind of the Montreal scene. So I know you had said, I think, K-Bands and Enema before. Who are some of the other artists that people might know from out here that you've worked with? English, French, either side?
Well, what's crazy about it is, like, you know, there's not too many guys from our local scene that have really popped as much as Toronto, especially. You know, like, we have, like, a select few guys that actually even hit 1 million views. Where I'm seeing in Toronto, it's like now there's almost like every week now you're seeing a new cat pop up who's able to do it, and we just don't have that out here yet. Whether it's the platform or, you know, there's some artists that are getting grants now that are really able to push it, but, like, off of just, like, the pure street like movement of music, like it's not like it is in Toronto or even New York or just these, like, higher populated areas. And especially since Montreal, we have a divide between the English scene and the French scene. So it's like you take our population, it's already divided right away. Especially if you're an English artist, it's probably divided even on the lower end. So there's not too many. I'll definitely tell you. You know, a lot of the bigger cats that I record are people that are coming in from out of town. You know, like we have Kate Trinata, High Classified. They're both producers.
Mm-hmm.
They came in when there was a Chicago artist coming into town.
Yeah.
That's how we work together. So it's like hard game out here, definitely, but it's picking up just like I see in Toronto. But you know, you got to understand the size of your city and what you're dealing with left and right. You know, it's crazy to see though. Even me, I've recorded over 3,000 artists, and to only see like 3-4 of them actually get to that point, it's a little wild.
Well, like even for me, like I was part of it like years ago, like 10 years ago, I was rapping, right?
Yeah.
And like I super wanted to do it, but I wasn't any good, so it's like that just kind of pushed on. Like I finally just made my own YouTube and was like, yo, I'm not marketing this to anyone from here. I want millions of views before I show anyone here. And that's what I did, and I learned it's like, yo, there's things that don't happen in Montreal that happen in other places that can get you so much further. So that kind of leads me into my next question. What do you think like the biggest thing is artists from the city, like Montreal in particular, aren't doing that they need to do?
A big thing, definitely visuals. And it's not only the artists that aren't doing something that they need to be doing. It's also just having a community that's invested into hip-hop. Having radio stations that support hip-hop. Even there's like when you think about New York, right away you have Hot 97, you got Breakfast Club, you got all these big radio stations pumping hip-hop music non-stop. Where in Montreal, we have, let's say, like CKUT, but they're only starting at like 7 o'clock at night.
And it's a niche station.
And it's like maybe once or twice a week you're going to get something, and then you get local hip-hop acts, but it's not like you could pump in and you hear the latest, song that's popping out right now. Mm-hmm. So we'll get, you get Cardi B on the top hits or something, but like as far as real hip-hop, we're not catching that on more like on... more of like our whole Montreal isn't listening to it, it's just there's not enough people that are interested in this community.
Yeah. So
it's not completely the artist's fault. It's just there's not enough money being driven into the industry here. So that's why I've contributed so much to help grow the scene. Yeah. There's guys, all the promoters that are bringing in artists. These are people that putting in money into the scene so that now, okay, this artist comes into town, he collaborates with a couple artists, this helps elevate the whole scene. That's something I also tell artists, they don't understand it sometimes, but just tapping into a studio, just going into a clothing store, networking with a couple artists, even doing a track with them, that brings up like the worth of our community of hip-hop so much that I just give my blessing, man. I'm just grateful that you're doing this, and like I really appreciate it because we need as many of these people to pop by and collaborate and mesh into our little community as possible, especially the English artists.
Yeah, 100%. So from what I'm getting from you, and this is definitely how I feel, it's that there's a lack of infrastructure, especially for English artists if you're in Quebec in general.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what do you think, like, the things are we can do to, like, help with that? Like, obviously, you have this going here, like I said, DMS. I have my thing going. Do you think that there's stuff that, like, can still be done? Like...
Yeah, definitely. I think having a radio station, that would be rocking, but it's just the industry has to prove its worth. And I'm not sure if Montreal has done that, and I feel like there's also been a big push from the French side that has disallowed certain companies from coming in, or that has made certain bigger companies uninterested from even coming into Montreal for all these like random French laws that they have and this and that, and especially since hip-hop is an English industry, when you're catching somebody that wants to start a hip-hop radio and then you're looking up the laws and it's telling him that he has to play this much % of French music, and it's like, okay, well now my whole channel is about to get distorted anyways and displays with all... So I'm sure there's a lot of, I could just go to Toronto and I could do 100% hip-hop of what I want to play.
Yeah.
What's the option going to be if you're about to invest millions into a radio station and for a satellite? And it's crazy to start these things, and so it's the industry has to prove its value.
Yeah, definitely. So do you think for like an artist, like not like just an average artist, but someone who's actually got good music going, you know, maybe a bit of a catalog, is maybe starting to get to that step where they could have a career? Do you think that it's worth it to move out of the city, move to like in Atlanta or in LA, or because I hear this from a lot of people that they, even from Toronto, they say there's a cap here, and then once you get to that, you should leave the city and go and find, you know, greener pastures.
For sure. The first time I went to LA was when I was 18, and it really opened up my eyes to understand that, okay, there's thousands of people right now in a studio tonight. As we sit here and are doing our interview, there's somebody else sitting in a studio right now with this big celebrity, paying him 20 bands to jump on his track because he's about to do some big song tonight, and then he's going to drop it the next month. There's 1,000 people doing that with big names tonight. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, I'm in Montreal and people are tripping about X, Y, Z. I'm like, yo, this is almost irrelevant.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, yo, there's studios pumping right now with major hits, with big artists, and they're all active.
Yeah.
And they're all there, and they're all condensed in like 4 major cities. I was like, yo, okay, well, look, maybe you don't have to move, but, yo, to tap into these places very often and to do big trips and to really meet people in the industry, you have to do that. And I think the earlier you start doing that, the earlier you realize the value in that. And then you also could realize if you do have a place out there. You know, the one thing I learned from LA is that a lot of the people I was meeting aren't even from LA.
Yeah.
They're just from all of their cities, and they were the best of. Hey, I was the best of from Texas. I was the best of from my city down here. I was the best. And they all just came there to have no cap, like you were saying. Because in LA, you're famous there. Who are you? You know?
Yeah.
You're famous.
Yeah.
You're famous in Montreal. Who are you? You know, there's that cap.
Yeah.
So it's crazy to think, like, to even get famous in LA, that means you're going to be famous globally.
Yeah, pretty much.
So that's why there's definitely an interesting thing about that. Yeah, the biggest places I like travel is definitely LA, Atlanta, New York, Florida. These are the places that I'll always tap into because I see there's a lot of value and there's a lot of moves happening, and you never know who you're going to run into, especially if you're spending enough time at the studio.
Okay. Did you want to wrap it up for 9, or do you want
to? Yeah, we could go on a couple.
I have a couple more questions. If you want to go. All right. So, I don't know if you remember this, but when we talk, I told you I want to kind of go into rap battle. But I don't know if you remember, but my first rap battle like 10 years ago, you judged that.
Right. Yes, we did speak about this. Yeah, in the park with CY. Shout out CY.
Angry Neil Park, if I remember right.
Yeah, for sure.
So the guy who I battled wasn't very good. I was kind of mad at CY that he put me against the guy, but it was good for my first battle. It was a fun experience. So like, what made you start battling?
Well, I was always like in the background of the scenes like that. I was judging. I was doing this. I was always spitting. You know, I'd try to perform at a lot of those battles just as an artist doing a set. And then eventually I was just hearing like people talk about the Montreal music scene, the English scene. And they're like, oh, Montreal music, English scene, it's just a bunch of French guys trying to rap English with accents. And I'm like, no. There's amazing artists in town. There's great English artists in Montreal. It's just maybe there's a branding problem. Maybe there's this, and maybe they're not in the light. But, yo, if you go to shows, if you're on the streets and you hear some of these artists, we have some of the craziest artists. Mm-hmm. So as one of those crazy artists, I felt like, yo, fuck this. I'm going to go up on stage and show them, nah, we're not just a bunch of whatever you think it is. You know, we're really going to show out. Yeah. And they put me up against one of these French guys trying to rap English. I took his food, and it was just endless. And like that feeling of actually like doing something in music, and there was a definite moment of like you either won or lost. Mm-hmm. When you release a track, there's no winning or losing. Yeah, you drop another track. You drop another track. You drop this. It's like, yo, if you fuck up, you lose. Yeah. And you're losing money.
And you embarrass yourself on the internet for life.
For sure. And me, I have my studio. I have a reputation. Exactly. And there's some guy that fucking, you know, I couldn't even look up anything on his social media. He has no background to him. So the stakes are there, so it was nice, man. I ended up showing out heavily. The guy fumbled his lines. It was over. It was crazy. And that was the moment that I was realized, okay, like this really does help the scene heavily, you know, because it's showing once again, you know, in Montreal really does have talented artists. Yeah. It's just needs that little kick, and sometimes you need a little bit more of a reason. And sometimes, you know, when you think about how people invest into their careers out in places like LA, New York, they invest so much more. Why? Because it's a little bit more possible, or they've seen other people around them actually reach those levels of success that they want to be, where here in Montreal, you don't see that. So you value not only your own career a little bit less, but how much you want to invest into your own career, because you don't see people around you popping left and right. So the industry doesn't prove itself.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so like, I know, obviously I said like a battle rap before, I know like a ton of preparation goes into that. And like you said, like, there's a lot of risk. You can ruin a reputation if you don't come and show out. So like, what's your preparation process, and like, what's your spitting process? Because I know people have different ways of doing that.
For me, usually we have about a month before the battle. They tell you who you're going to battle. You don't get to choose who you're going to battle. So it's just like, they ask you, do you want to do this for this date? And then you say yes, they tell you who you're going against. And that's it. You know, you got to go, and you can't back out, because like, once you say yes, they're putting you on, like, they basically tell you by putting you on the flyer.
Yeah, you better be in like a wheelchair if you back out.
So it's like, bro. So we've had situations where people fucking showed they took a picture of a cast on their leg. We reverse image searched, they just found it on Google. We were like, yo, cap. People try doing that kind of shit all the time. Super whack. What was the question again there?
Just your preparation process.
Okay, yeah. So what I do about a month before, I just write, and like, you got to put yourself in that mind state, and like, you pretty much can't like do almost anything, man. Like, you gotta fucking work. Well, especially me. I don't know about other people. I have a hard ass time memorizing my lyrics. So if I don't fully memorize that shit and go over it a million times, it's not gonna happen. You know, there's memorizing it, and then there's also doing the theatrics to it too. You know, how you're moving on stage. You know, and you're gonna fucking get a little close, and and you go, all that kind of shit. So it's just time. You know, you got to rehearse it alone.
Yeah. So
or I sometimes just yell at my dog. My dog gets all my battles.
There you go. Yeah, no, but you got to be prepped for sure. So like, what do you see yourself doing any more battles, and what do you see as the future of Montreal battle rap? Because I know it got a little harder there with COVID for them to do the event.
Yeah, for sure. Well, my last battle actually got canceled because of when COVID started. I don't know if I'm gonna hop back in the battle scene. I haven't seen too much movement, but also same thing, you know, bigger platform arises, this and that. It makes a little bit more sense. I've been supporting DMS battling since day one, you know. There just needs to be more and more support. You know, I'm getting more involved with Thesia, with what he's doing and stuff, and I want to keep getting all these connections, and not getting all these connections, but taking all these key players and getting us a little bit closer so that we're all moving in tandem, we're all moving together. And that's something that's also not happening a lot lately, you know? So what I've been trying to do is taking, you know, I'm a guy that just has a ton of connections, but I haven't been connecting my connections to each other. So I've been trying to do that lately, and I've been making some really cool teams happen. A lot of cool people have been moving in different ways now, because they're like, damn, we have all these resources available now. So I've been finding out some cool things like that, just to tap in the right people with each other, and I've been finding a lot of cool success with like a couple projects I've been running. One cool project I've been running we didn't tap in on is the jewelry, Orm and Crystallini. I started out this company about 2 years ago, and we've been rocking it nonstop. Now I'm using the community that I've built out for 12 years and saying, look, no more you guys are gonna get fucked over by all these jewelers. Yo, now you have somebody in the city, in the community that's able to make jewelry. I learned how to do 3D design. So now I'm actually 3D printing any object, casting that into gold, and then I'm able to put diamonds, polish it up, and put it on a pendant. And it's just crazy, because even in the 3D program, I could decide the weight, the size, everything. Yeah. So the big thing that I've really been seeing is that artists, you know, they'll go to a jeweler, they'll spend 10K, 20K, and they'll be so glad to support this jeweler. Yeah, my jeweler made by da-da-da-da-da. But then, no, not even that. They did. But that's not even what I'm mad at. What I'm really mad at is, this jeweler, does he come to your shows?
Yeah.
Does he do podcasts? Does he sponsor local hip-hop podcasts? Does he, you know, ever have anybody in his store? Have you ever seen him actually not behind his desk?
Yeah.
And that's the big thing. No, you haven't. These guys don't support our community. Why are we supporting their industry?
Yeah, for real.
And this is the biggest thing. So now when I'm working with artists, they're supporting my jewelry store. Well, this is something that goes right back into the hip-hop scene. I'm at every show. I'm always investing to get bigger artists to come into town, or to put myself out, to reach
Yeah.
out people, to reach back in town and this and that. It's always for Montreal.
Yeah.
So now it's just something to think about, you know, like